The crystal forests of Velcora sang their ancient song as wind passed through their translucent branches. The sound was haunting, beautiful, and utterly alone. No voice answered the crystals anymore. No footsteps disturbed the silver dust that covered the abandoned cities below. High in the northern mountains, in a sanctuary carved from living stone 10,000 years ago, Carthraxis lay coiled around himself. His scales, once brilliant as captured starlight, had begun to dull. Gray crept along their edges like frost on a dying leaf. He was tired, so very tired. Carthraxis remembered when this world thrived. He remembered the Velcorons, those graceful beings who had built cities that sang with the crystals. They had called to him across the void, young and curious and full of questions. He had come, as dragons always came when a species reached for the stars with pure hearts. He had taught them to read the stellar currents. He had shown them how to fold space like paper. He had warned them about the dangers that lurk between galaxies and celebrated with them when they achieved their first true interstellar flight. Then they had ascended, evolved beyond physical form into something he could no longer follow. They had thanked him, touching his massive head with their gentle hands one final time, and then they were gone, transformed into beings of purer thought, scattered across dimensions he could not reach. That had been 3,000 years ago. Since then, Carthraxis had wandered. He had searched for another species to guide, another civilization to shepherd. He found many intelligent races among the stars. Some were aggressive, their first thoughts always of conquest. Others were so alien he could not bridge the gap between their minds and his. None had that spark, that perfect combination of curiosity and compassion that made teaching worthwhile. He had returned to Velcora because it was the last place he had felt needed, the last place he had felt purpose. But purpose was a luxury for the living, and Carthraxis was ready to stop living. Dragons did not die like other creatures. They could not simply cease to exist. Instead, when their time came, they entered the final sleep. Their bodies would slowly transform into stone, becoming part of the world they had protected. Their consciousness would drift into the cosmic void, becoming one with the universe itself. It was not death. It was transformation, an ending and a beginning both. Carthraxis had resisted this call for centuries. Some stubborn part of him insisted there must be more, that his purpose had not truly ended. But decade after decade passed with no sign, no call, no species reaching out with that special combination of need and wonder. The galaxy had moved on. It no longer needed dragons. He shifted his massive bulk, his movements slow and deliberate. His amber eyes, each the size of a human torso, gazed out at the crystal forest below. The setting sun turned them into a sea of orange and pink fire. It was beautiful. Everything about Velcora was beautiful. Perhaps that was enough. Perhaps beauty witnessed was purpose enough for a life spanning eons. Carthraxis closed his eyes. He reached inward, finding the ancient instinct that would trigger the final sleep. It felt like releasing a breath he had been holding for millennia. Relief washed through him, warm and gentle. His scales began to harden. The gray spread faster now, welcomed rather than feared. Stone crept up from his claws, along his legs, across his massive chest. His heart, which had beaten steady for over 50,000 years, began to slow. His mind drifted. Memories floated past like leaves on a stream. He saw faces of the Velcorons, their large eyes filled with wonder as he explained how stars were born. He remembered the day he had first taken flight, a young dragon testing his wings above his home world, now dust for 20,000 years. He recalled the songs his mother had taught him, melodies older than most civilizations. Had it been a good life? Yes. Had he made a difference? He believed so. Was he content? That was harder to answer. But contentment was not required, only acceptance. The stone reached his neck, his jaw, creeping toward his eyes. Soon he would be complete, a statue to mark the end of an age. Perhaps some future species would find him here and wonder what he had been. Perhaps they would never know dragons had existed at all. Either outcome was acceptable. Carthraxis took one final look at the crystal forest, at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky, at the world he had loved. Then, with a peace that came from simply letting go. He closed his eyes forever, or so he believed. 200 years passed in silence. The crystal forests continued their song, unchanged and unheard. Carthraxis remained in his mountain sanctuary, frozen in stone, his consciousness drifting somewhere beyond the physical realm. Then humanity arrived. They came in their loud ships with bright engines that scare away the small creatures living in the forests. They built a research station in orbit, a spinning wheel of metal and glass that reflected Velcora's sun. Scientists came to study the crystals, the ruins, the mysterious civilization that had vanished without explanation. Among them was Mira Chun, though she was not a scientist. She was 12 years old, small for her age, with dark hair always tied back in a messy braid. She lived on a research station because she had nowhere else to go. Her parents had been xenoarchaeologists. They had died 3 years ago when their shuttle crashed during a storm on a different world. Mira had been left in the care of the research community, passed between families who were kind but busy, always busy with their important work. Nobody had time for a lonely girl who asked too many questions. Mira spent her days in the station's library, reading everything she could find about Velcora. She studied the ruins, the crystal formations, the strange symbols carved into ancient walls. The other children her age found it boring. They wanted to play games on their tablets or watch entertainment feeds from Earth. But Mira wanted to understand. She wanted to know who had built those beautiful cities and where they had gone. She felt connected to them somehow, these vanished people who had left only questions behind. The adults would not let her visit the planet's surface. Too dangerous, they said. Too many unknowns. Children were not allowed on the research expeditions. So Mira did what any curious 12-year-old would do. She snuck aboard a supply shuttle. It was easier than she expected. The cargo bay had dozens of equipment crates, and she was small enough to hide behind them. The pilot never checked before departing. Within an hour, Mira felt the shuttle shake as it entered Velcora's atmosphere. When they landed at the main research camp, Mira waited until the crew finished unloading. Then she slipped out while they were distracted with inventory checks. The camp was at the edge of the crystal forest, and it took only minutes for her to disappear among the translucent trees. She had studied the maps obsessively. She knew where she wanted to go. The northern mountains held the largest concentration of ruins. Satellite images showed structures that had never been explored because they were too remote, too difficult to reach. But Mira had noticed something in those images that nobody else seemed to care about. High in the peaks, there was a building that looked different from the others, more deliberate, more important. It took her 6 hours of walking to reach the mountains. Her legs ached and her water bottle was nearly empty, but she did not turn back. Something pulled her forward, a feeling she could not explain. The sanctuary entrance was larger than she expected. The doorway stood 30 feet tall, carved with symbols that seemed to shift in the fading sunlight. Mira touched the ancient stone, feeling grooves worn smooth by time and weather. She stepped inside. The interior was vast, a cathedral carved from the mountain itself. Crystal formations grew from the walls, providing dim light that pulsed gently, like breathing. The air smelled old but not unpleasant, like libraries and museums. Then Mira saw him. At first, she thought it was a statue, the most incredible statue ever created. It dominated the chamber, a massive dragon coiled in peaceful rest. Every scale was perfectly detailed. The wings, folded against the body, showed individual membranes between each bone. The face was noble and ancient, eyes closed as if merely sleeping. Mira approached slowly, her heart pounding. She had read about dragons in stories from Earth, but those were fantasies. This looked real. This looked like something that had actually lived. She walked around the enormous form, studying it from every angle. Near the dragon's head, she found carved text on the floor. The symbols were Velcoran, but they had been translated into dozens of other languages. Some she recognized. Others were completely alien. But one section was in standard Earth script, probably added by early human explorers who had passed through without truly investigating. Carthraxis, she read aloud. Guardian of Velcora. Teacher of the Star Path. Last of his kind. The name felt right in her mouth. Important. heavy with meaning. Mira sat down beside the dragon's massive head. She pulled out her tablet and began photographing the text, recording everything. But more than that, she simply sat there in the fading light, keeping company with the stone dragon. She did not feel alone anymore. "Hello, Carthraxis," she whispered. "My name is Mira." The dragon, of course, did not answer. Dragons carved from stone never did. Mira returned to the sanctuary 7 times over the next 3 weeks. The first time, she had been caught sneaking back to the research camp and received a serious lecture. The station director wanted to send her back to Earth, to some government facility for orphan children. But Dr. Yuki Tanaka, one of the xenolinguists, had spoken up for her. She offered to take Mira on official expeditions to the ruins as her assistant. Nobody needed to know that Mira slipped away during these expeditions to visit a certain mountain sanctuary. Each visit, she brought something new, a music player with songs from Earth, books loaded on her tablet, drawings she had made. She would sit beside the stone dragon and talk. She told Carthraxis about her parents, how her mother used to sing old Chinese lullabies, how her father could identify any alien artifact just by touch, how much she missed him, even after 3 years. She told him about life on the research station, about feeling invisible among adults too focused on their work to notice a lonely child, about the other kids who thought she was weird for caring about dead civilizations. She told him her fears, that she would never find a place where she belonged, that she was not smart enough or special enough to matter. The dragon never responded, but Mira felt better after these conversations. Something about the sanctuary felt safe, protected, like the stone dragon was still watching over things, even in his eternal sleep. On her 8th visit, everything changed. The day had started badly. Dr. Tanaka had announced she was transferring to a different research station. She would be leaving in 2 weeks. She had tried to arrange for another scientist to take Mira under their wing, but nobody had volunteered. The implication was clear. Mira would be sent back to Earth after all. Mira had held her tears until she reached the sanctuary. Then they came in hot, angry waves. "It's not fair," she sobbed, pressing her hands against the dragon's stone chest. "I finally found something I care about, and they are taking it away. I finally found a place that feels like home, and I have to leave." She slid down to sit against one of his massive forelegs, her shoulders shaking. "Everyone leaves," she whispered. "Mom and Dad left. Dr. Tanaka is leaving. Even the Velcorons left this place. Everyone always leaves, and I am always alone." The words hung in the air of the ancient sanctuary. Mira wiped her eyes with her sleeve, embarrassed to be crying in front of the statue. "I wish you were real," she said quietly. "I wish you could talk to me. I wish someone would just stay." She looked up at the dragon's face, at those closed stone eyes. She remembered the translations on the floor, the weight his name carried. "Carthraxis," she said, pronouncing each syllable carefully the way the Velcoron phonetic guide indicated. "I wish you were still here." For a moment, nothing happened. Mira closed her own eyes, feeling foolish. Then she felt it, a vibration, deep and low, coming from inside the stone itself. Her eyes snapped open. The dragon's chest, where she had been leaning moments before, was glowing. Faint amber light traced between the scales, like cracks in thick ice. "No way," Mira breathed, scrambling backward. The glow spread, up the dragon's neck, along his spine, down his legs. The stone surface began to crack, small pieces flaking away like old paint. Beneath the gray exterior, something shimmered. Scales, real scales, metallic and alive, catching the crystal light. Myra's heart hammered in her chest. She should run. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she could not move. She could only watch as the impossible happened before her eyes. The dragon's chest expanded. A breath, the first breath in 200 years. More stone fell away, revealing muscles that flexed and shifted. The wings twitched, membranes stretching after centuries of stillness. Steam rose from the awakening body as warmth returned to ancient flesh. Then the eyes opened. They were amber, exactly as Mira had imagined, vast and deep and filled with something that looked like confusion. The eyes focused, searching the sanctuary, until they found her. Girl and dragon stared at each other across an impossible distance, both frozen in shock. When the dragon spoke, his voice resonated not in the air, but directly in Myra's mind. It was deep and ancient, like mountains settling, like stars being born. "Who?" the voice said, filled with wonder and disbelief. "Who called my name?" Myra's voice came out as barely a whisper, but in the silence of the sanctuary, it was enough. "I did." For several long moments, neither moved. Mira pressed herself against the sanctuary wall, her heart racing so fast she thought it might burst. Carthraxis remained still, his massive head lowered, those amber eyes studying the tiny human child with an intensity that made her feel transparent. "You are afraid?" The dragon's voice echoed in her mind. It was not accusing, simply observing. "You are a dragon," Mira managed to say. "A real dragon. You were stone, and now you are not stone, and I thought I was going crazy, but you are real." Something that might have been amusement rippled through the mental connection. I was not stone. I was sleeping. The final sleep. I was not supposed to wake. "I am sorry," Mira said quickly. "I did not mean to wake you. I just said your name. I did not know it would actually do anything." Carthraxis shifted, his body still adjusting to physical existence again. Muscles that had not moved in centuries stretched and flexed. He was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. "Do not apologize," he said. "I am the one who is confused. The final sleep is not meant to be broken. Once a dragon enters that state, they drift into the cosmic void forever. Yet I heard you, across eternity, across the emptiness. I heard a voice speaking my name with such need that it pulled me back." He lowered his head closer to Mira, studying her with ancient curiosity. She could see her reflection in his eye, small and fragile. "What are you?" he asked. "You are not Velcaron. Your form is different. Your mind feels different. Yet you speak their language and you knew my name." "I am human," Mira said, finding her courage slowly returning. "My species came here to study the Velcarons, to learn about them. I found you while exploring." "Human," Carthraxis repeated the word slowly, tasting it. "I do not know the species." "Show me." Before Mira could ask what he meant, she felt a gentle pressure in her mind. Not invasive, but questioning. Instinctively, she understood. She thought about humanity, about Earth, about everything that made her people who they were. Images flowed between them. Earth's blue oceans, crowded cities reaching toward the sky, music and art and literature, wars and peace treaties, scientific discoveries and foolish mistakes. The whole messy, beautiful, complicated story of humanity poured from Myra's mind into the dragon's. When the connection faded, Carthraxis pulled back, his eyes wide with something like wonder. "Impossible," he whispered. "You are so young. Your species has barely left its home world. You live such short lives like candle flames. Yet you burn so brightly. You create and destroy with equal passion. You reach the stars with hands that barely understand what you are grasping. Is that bad?" Mira asked nervously. "No," the dragon said, and this time the amusement in his voice was clear. "It is extraordinary. You are like the Velcarons were in their early days. So much potential, so much curiosity." He paused. "Tell me, young human, why did you come here? Why did you speak to a statue?" Mira looked down at her feet. "I was lonely. Everyone on the station is too busy for me. The other kids think I am weird. I just wanted someone to talk to, even if that someone was made of stone." Understanding flowed to the mental link, deep and warm. "I know loneliness," Carthraxis said softly. "I am the last of my kind. I entered the final sleep because I believed my purpose had ended. No species called me anymore. No civilization needed what I could teach." He made a sound like a sigh. Perhaps I was wrong. Over the next few days, an unlikely friendship grew. Mira continued to visit, now with permission since Dr. Tanaka's sensors had detected the massive energy signature from the sanctuary. The scientist was too amazed by the discovery to scold Mira for keeping secrets. Instead, she gave the girl complete access, understanding that Carthraxis would only communicate with the one who had awakened him. Mira brought her music player and played Earth songs for the dragon. He listened with fascination, particularly to the classical pieces and traditional folk music from different cultures. Your species expresses emotion through sound in complex ways, he observed. Each culture has distinct patterns, yet they all speak of the same fundamental experiences: joy, sorrow, love, loss. Do dragons make music? Mira asked. We sing the stellar currents, Carthraxis said, but it has been a very long time since I sang. In return, the dragon taught Mira about the universe. He showed her mental images of nebulas being born, of civilizations that had risen and fallen long before humans existed. He taught her the Velcaron language properly, explaining concepts that human scholars had struggled with for years. You learn quickly, he told her. Your mind is flexible, open. These are gifts. My teachers say I daydream too much, Mira admitted. Dreaming is how new ideas are born, the dragon replied. Never stop dreaming. But their peaceful time together was running out. On the research station, alarms were blaring. Corporate executives were making calls. Military contractors were checking equipment manifests. A dragon meant power. Power meant profit. And profit meant people were coming. They arrived 6 days after Carthraxis awakened. 3 military shuttles landed at the research camp, carrying soldiers in heavy armor and scientists with containment equipment. The corporation that funded the research station had sent them with clear orders: secure the dragon by any means necessary. Mira saw them arrive from the sanctuary entrance. She had been staying there almost constantly, sleeping against Carthraxis's warm scales while he kept watch. Dr. Tanaka had tried to warn them, sending urgent messages, but it was too late. They are coming for you, Mira said, fear tight in her chest. They want to take you away, use you as a weapon, or study you like some laboratory animal. Carthraxis looked down at the approaching force with those ancient amber eyes. I could stop them easily. One breath and their machines would melt. One sweep my tail and their shuttles would be scrap metal. No, Mira said firmly, placing her small hand on his leg. That would make you the monster they think you are. That would prove they were right to fear you. The dragon was quiet for a moment. Then what would you have me do, small one? Show them what dragons really are, Mira said. Show them why the Velcarons loved you. Show them you are a teacher, not a weapon. The soldiers entered the sanctuary with weapons raised. Their leader, a hard-faced woman named Commander Torres, stepped forward with a containment device humming in her hands. We are here under corporate authority, she announced. The dragon is to be secured and transported to a research facility. Do not interfere. Carthraxis rose to his full height, his head nearly touching the sanctuary ceiling. His presence filled the space with such power that several soldiers stepped backward involuntarily. I am Carthraxis, his voice boomed, speaking aloud now so all could hear. Guardian, teacher, last of the star dragons. I am not your weapon. I am not your property. I am not something to be contained. Commander Torres's hand moved toward her weapon. We have authorization to use force if necessary. Stop, Mira shouted, stepping between the soldiers and the dragon. She looked impossibly small in that moment, a 12-year-old girl facing armed soldiers. But she did not move. You do not understand what he is, what he can give us. Step aside, child, Torres said, not unkindly. This does not concern you. It concerns everyone, Mira insisted. She turned to address all the soldiers, all the scientists who had followed them in. Do you know what this place really is? Do you know what the crystal forests actually contain? She looked up at Carthraxis, and he nodded slightly. Together, they had discovered it during their time learning from each other. The dragon's ancient knowledge combined with human curiosity had revealed what centuries of research had missed. Show them, Mira said softly. Carthraxis closed his eyes. The crystals throughout the sanctuary began to glow brighter. The light spread, racing through the walls, into the ground, out toward the forest beyond. Throughout Velcora, every crystal began to pulse with information. Images filled the air, projected by the crystals themselves. Mathematical formulas, star charts, medical knowledge, technological designs, the accumulated wisdom of the Velcaron civilization, stored in crystalline memory banks that cover the entire planet. The Velcarons did not abandon this world, Carthraxis explained, his voice gentle now. They left it as a gift, a library containing millions of years of knowledge, waiting for the next species worthy of learning from it, waiting for someone curious enough to ask the right questions. The soldiers lowered their weapons, staring in awe at the floating images. Commander Torres's containment device fell from her hands. Forgotten. This knowledge cannot be taken by force, the dragon continued. It cannot be owned or weaponized. It can only be freely given to those who approach with open minds and pure intentions. He looked directly at Commander Torres. Your species stands at a crossroads. You can try to claim me as a prize, use this knowledge for profit and power, or you can accept what I offer, to teach you as I once taught the Velcarons, to guide you toward becoming something greater than you are. The commander stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she removed her helmet. What would you have us do? Learn, Carthraxis said simply. Question. Grow. That is what humans do best. I have discovered. You are young and reckless and make many mistakes, but you never stop reaching for something better. He lowered his head toward Mira, touching her gently with his snout. This child taught me that. She woke me not with power or demands, but with loneliness and hope. She reminded me that teaching is not about finding perfect students. It is about nurturing potential wherever it appears. Commander Torres contacted her superiors. There were arguments, threats, demands. But when she showed them what the crystals contained, when she explained what the dragon offered, the tone changed. Greed gave way to wonder. Fear transformed into possibility. Over the following weeks, the research camp transformed. More scientists arrived, but now they came as students rather than exploiters. Carthraxis taught them to access the crystalline libraries, to understand Velcaron technology, to think in ways that bridged ancient wisdom and human innovation. And Mira remained his first student, the keeper of the sanctuary, the bridge between dragon and human. One evening, as the sun set over crystal forests, painting them in shades of amber that matched his eyes, Carthraxis spoke softly into Myra's mind. I thought I closed my eyes forever, he said. I thought my time had ended. But it had not, Mira said, smiling as she leaned against his warm scales. No, the dragon agreed. I simply had to wait for someone brave enough to speak my name. Someone who saw not a statue or a weapon, but a teacher waiting for one more student. Below them, human children laughed as they played among the crystals, learning to read the ancient light language. Carthraxis watched them with contentment settling deep in his bones. He had found his purpose again, and this time he would not sleep until humanity was ready to fly among the stars on their own wings.